Now the floor is given to Ministry of Defense spokesman on NATO-related issues, Colonel Andriy Lysenko. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Now the information about the events that happened in the ATO zone during the last 24 hours and about the course of training of Ukrainian armed forces. In the Lugansk sector, military actions were in Krymsk and in the territory of Popasnyansky region between 4 and 9 p.m. And at noon, Russian occupation forces opened fire with the use of artillery of 122 mortars in Krymsk. And in 2 hours, there were one more provocation with the use of grenade launchers. And there were 2 shellings, one with the use of mortars in Novotoshkivsk, and the militants opened fire with the use of mortars in Novozvanivka. During the last 24 hours in the Lugansk sector, there were 6 armed provocations delivered by the enemy, including 3 with the use of heavy weapons. At the Donetsk sector, yesterday, the most tense situation was observed in the region of Avdiivka and its suburbs. There, between 6 p.m. and midnight, the militants 4 times fired with the use of mortars. In the region of Novolugansk and Lugansk, the enemy carried out one armed provocation with the use of 120mm mortars, and 1 mortar shelling happened in Pisky village. In Gorlovka perimeter, the enemy used exclusively small arms. During the last 24 hours in the Donetsk sector, there were 14 enemy shellings, including 7 with the use of mortars. The Mariupol sector, here, as previously, lion's share of the episodes of ceasefire violations are in Pavlopil-Shirokina, part of front line. In this part of front line, the enemy opened fire with the use of small arms at night, and starting 6 a.m. and until the evening, the enemy used heavy weapons. Russian occupation forces opened fire with the use of artillery 122mm of caliber in Talakivka and Shirokina. In Novotroitsk, Chermalik and Shirokina, enemy sniper groups were active. Yesterday, at about 11:30, the occupants, with the use of small arms, shelled Chermalik town, and in the result they wounded a local woman in the leg, and she was hospitalized. Also yesterday the militants shelled Mariinka and Krasnogorivka with the use of mortars, and in the result of this incident in Mariinka, 1 private house was ruined. And during the last 24 hours in the Mariupol sector, there were 34 enemy shellings, including 9 with the use of heavy weapons. During the last 24 hours, in the result of the military actions, no Ukrainian serviceman was killed, but 3 servicemen were wounded. SBU officers, together with the servicemen of armed forces, detained in Luganshina, an armed militant near Sokolniki village of Novaidarsk region of Lugansk Oblast. The detained was wearing a camouflaged uniform and had in his hand a machine gun with 3 magazines because he planned to fire at Ukrainian checkpoint. It was identified that the militant is called Anton Alinik. He is 28. The perpetrator hails from Lysychansk, and recently he lived in Antrasit. He fought against Ukraine starting 2014, and he was the member of Prizrak, Ghost militant group, Kozak Brigade, Yarga group, and also they verify his involvement in torturing Ukrainian hostages. SBU officers liquidated all Ukrainian network of illegal gun makers. The perpetrators for a year bought in Ukraine and abroad starter signal and traumatic weapons and made on their basis battle weapons. Law enforcement searched 20, carried out 20 searches in Kharkiv and Mykolaiv. They confiscated 35 units of weaponry that was reproduced to use battle cartridges, Kalashnikov machine gun, Simonov machine gun, Scorpion, Makarov gun, TT Carrera, and Nagana and Safari guns. And also they confiscated 500 cartridges, F1 grenade, RGD-5 grenade launcher, PG-22 signal start and traumatic pistols, also some spare parts for the production of the elements of fire guns, and also equipment for producing these guns in batch. And in Girsket, servicemen of National Guard detained a man with a grenade, and this village is near the front line. And also about the training, the graduates of the National Academy of the National Guard of Ukraine had some field training, and according to the curricula, the personnel of 3 faculties carried out specific tasks. And for example, students that will soon become officers to work with personnel, they were trained to set a point for moral and psychological support, and those who study at the Faculty of Economics and Management were set in a base field camp and rear facilities. And in the ranks of the National Guard of Ukraine, they continue the months of training for tank detachments. The aim of this event is to improve professional skills of the personnel and to identify the best crew. And before a practical use of the equipment and driving and firing exercises and technical actions, they obligatory have briefing about security and safety measures. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, please ask. No questions. Thank you and goodbye.